Hello and welcome. I'm Sarah Barrett-Neal, Gallery Manager at the Glen Arbor Arts Center. Today I'm in conversation with painter Linda Dewey and poet Anne-Marie Oomen about their collaborative project entitled On The Precipice, which you can see in the Arts Center Lobby Gallery through August 11. On the Precipice is composed of 9 pastel paintings by Linda and 9 companion poems written in response to the paintings by Anne-Marie. The Art Center is exhibiting 4 of these works as a way to explore how artists collaborate and the tradition of ekphrasis, the practice of creating a literary description of a work of art. Linda, Anne-Marie, welcome.
Thank
Linda, oh, you're so welcome. Linda, recap briefly the events that inspired this collaborative event.
Sure. I'm on Facebook a lot. And Anne-Marie and her husband, David, were on a trip in the Upper Peninsula. And she posted this wonderful photograph of children climbing the banks of a river in the middle of the woods, and there's this huge tree there on the edge, and you can see the bare roots and you could see the erosion taking place, and the kids are climbing on it, and they're having fun, and but the tree looks like it's barely hanging on. And I was so moved by all the metaphorical meaning and the beauty of the picture itself. I asked Anne-Marie if I could paint it, as I often do. I often see photographs and I ask if I can paint it. And she absolutely gave me permission, so I painted it. And I presented it when it was finished. It wasn't easy to do. And Anne-Marie had already begun a poem to go along with it. And she used a phrase in her original post that lent it to the, I think she even used the word precipice. I'm not quite sure about that. But so I titled it On the Precipice because for so many different reasons. And then Anne-Marie posted her poem, and I said to her in a message, I think this might be a thing. Should we explore maybe doing this with some other pieces? So she came over to my place and she looked at the paintings that were already on my wall. And then we also looked at photographs that I had intended to paint at some point that might be pointing towards a theme where we are at, in one way or another, on a precipice. Things could go either way. Precarious. That, in fact, precarious, I think, is the word that was in her post originally. So she and I chose the pictures together, and she worked on poetry while some of them were already painted, but I worked on the others, and that's how this came to be.
I'm going to do a quick screen share, and there is On the Precipice.
Oh, yeah. So pretty.
The painting that came out of all of this. Anne-Marie, you've engaged in a number of collaborative projects in the past. What interests you about working with another artist on a shared project?
Well, it depends totally on the artist, because I have to have a sense of admiration and inspiration from the work. In both of those were absolutely in place with Linda's work. And also I was so intrigued with what she had done, because the photograph is closer. And what she did was pull the point of view into a place of distance, which in some ways was so cool, because that re-inspired the poem to take on a greater distance as well. in terms of the point of view of the speaker of the poem, if that makes any sense at all.
Mhm.
That's sort of the literary take on it. And because she pulled herself away from and gave distance to those children, it brought the tree to the surface, and that whole idea then started rolling of the precipice as a thematic statement. I mention all that because in collaboration, that's how it works. One thing plays off another, and the bouncing effect, the volley of ideas is what's joyful in collaboration. And if the admiration and the inspiration are there, then it's something I just thoroughly enjoy. And it's not effortless, but it's the kind of work that I value because it brings meaning to my life.
What you're talking about makes me think that one needs to be present and alert in collaborative undertakings because things change. As you think about a thing over time, your perception of it changes. And I'm interested what you said about you're looking at the painting that Linda created, and that caused you to pull back your view and how you articulated it.
Right. So it led to the revision, which was really, that was a joy,
Linda, this is your first collaboration with another artist. What has the collaboration revealed to you about creative process and working on a shared project with another human being?
For me, well, first of all, it's such an honor to work with Anne-Marie. I've always admired her and her work, and as a person. And so it was a real honor to be able to interact in a work environment with ideas, and just being in her presence was it opened up things for me. What I learned was, and I kind of felt intuitively as we worked, was the respect for one another's craft, the sense that Anne-Marie was always deferring as far as judging the painting goes, and even hanging the work, and she would always say, well, you know much more about this than I do. And that's the way I feel about her work. I mean, she's a master at working with words, and as a poet, and renowned. And so it was always about honoring the other's work and listening to the other's take from that side of art. And there was a great deal of respect and listening. I would say those are the big things for me.
In thinking about talking with the both of you about this, I can't help but think so much about that myth of the artist laboring away in a dark garret alone, distanced from other people. And that's not true. There's just a whole grand history of collaborative events between people of like media, like practice. Now we don't hear so much about that. You guys are probably going to help stimulate a rush of new collaborations after people see this.
I hope so.
Anne-Marie, writers often employ prompts to help jumpstart their creative process, their creative engine. In the essay you wrote for this exhibition, you put that thing into context when you mentioned the technique of ekphrasis writing. Talk a little bit about ekphrasis as a creative tool.
Well, I think it's one of, for me personally, because I'm a visual thinker, I can't do what Linda does and enact that, or what you do with your beautiful textiles. I can't enact that in a concrete way except through language. But I am a visual thinker in that way. And so when I look at a painting, I'm not just looking at its beauty, I'm also sensing underneath it, I'm letting the imagination go and entering it. And that is actually the word that is used by people who write the critical theory about ekphrasis, is that we enter a poem, a painting, and we're entering it in a way that, one, we may be entering it narratively as a story, experientially as a moment, a subjective moment. We may be entering it in terms of character as we identify with a particular, if there's a figure in there. We may be entering it as an object even, the still lifes are, that particular orange, you have a kind of empathy with it. And so all of those kinds of things start to come to the surface from a visual cue that for me links to language instead of linking to the fingertips and whatever the impulse is for a visual response. So yes, paintings are an incredible prompt for me. And I've started over the years to teach it. And I find that people they're amazing in the ways that they enter into a visual piece. Studying a particular image for a while, spending those silent moments, invigorates the imagination in a different way from a prompt that's more literary. And I think it's really interesting, the results.
So it works on a couple of different levels. You can enter the work and produce something that's directly in response to the work.
Yes.
But what you're also saying, I think, is that it's a good tool for practice in terms of helping one to think and see differently.
Yes, exactly. And also, I mean, its original Greek, the rhetorical purpose was the impossible, was that the language was supposed to replicate the painting so beautifully that when you read the language, you could replicate the painting without seeing the painting, or the object without seeing it. That was the original goal. Of course, it's impossible. It can't be done. So that impossibility, that kind of contradiction, I think, is also inspirational in the way it works. Yeah.
There's something that you wrote about in the essay that puts this exhibition in context, Anne-Marie, and I want you both to respond to it. I'm going to read a little bit from it, and then I'd like you both to talk about this. Anne-Marie, you wrote, "We agreed on the following. Ours was a time of turmoil and change, the precipice. We didn't want to create merely lovely images and comforting sentiment. We both felt that creating beauty is a way of resistance, and though we wanted to honor beauty, we also didn't want to veer entirely from upheaval. We wanted to let the images and their accompanying poems nod to the mood of the world." So you're talking about using the arts to address difficult subjects in a way that viewers and readers can not only engage in, but come away with being able to think about things differently. Talk about that. You didn't diss beauty, but doing beautiful things wasn't the purpose here.
Nice.
Linda, why don't you talk a little bit about the difficulties here?
Well, I have for a long time admired artists who used their art as a form of a social statement. And I had been quite consciously for at least a year wishing that I could do that. And I had basically been painting pretty paintings or trying to. And when I saw this photograph, this first initiating photograph, and saw the metaphor behind it, I immediately knew that this was that kind of an image that could say so much more. And so, and I, for a long time, I don't know that anyone can live in this time and not be aware of all of the upheaval that's going on, whether it's the climate or an environment or the or socially, and we were in the pandemic. We you know, with that, and we actually got together before the pandemic began, and I believe it was October 2019. And then we launched into this, and we hadn't even started the pandemic at that point. And so then it became really relevant because then we were in lockdown.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were speaking to many issues, many social issues.
Anne-Marie?
I think I couldn't agree more. I think Linda's articulated it beautifully, but I think, again, I go back to the joy of creating as an act of resistance. I mean, in the face of so much that seems to be gloom and doom and darkness, creating is still an act of joy. And in that, it is a way of resisting that mood of not just upheaval, but of the sense of apocalyptic, we're in an apocalyptic moment of some sort. And I go back to that thing that you said earlier about we have this image of writers and often painters working alone over their canvases or their pages. And in fact, we all work in community. And that is one of the things I think we draw on as part of that claim of beauty, that we are in some sense, we act as a communal effort. Because when I'm writing, I'm hearing all kinds of voices around me. I mean, the voices of my family and the voices of the characters I'm inventing, or the voice of the poem that's speaking about an issue or about an image. And all of that is a sense of the community. That to me is a true resistance. That's a way of enacting a power against what seems like overwhelming doom. And yeah, the mood of the world is very dark right now. But when you look at Linda's paintings and you see that light working in those paintings and that the color working in those paintings, to me, that's an aesthetic resistance. And that's, to me, is inspirational. So I just feel like that's all about how we, in the smallest way, because we're so often overwhelmed with feelings of helplessness and powerlessness. And these are the ways in which our art protests that and speaks a little bit, maybe just a little bit louder against all of that.
So if I can just add one thought, the thought of community, you know, and the artists being alone and working alone, it is with the thought of sharing our work. And certainly there's a fulfillment, but I don't paint just for myself. I paint hoping that I can share it and that other people will derive some sort of joy or some kind of more esoteric, you know, relationship to the art. So we're doing it with the sense of community, with the sense of sharing. So in a sense, we are not alone when we're working, even though it appears that way.
Yeah, and that's an act of resistance. Yeah. And if you look at the poems, they're connected, sometimes they're connected directly to the painting as a description, but they're also building from it. And they often, and I couldn't help this, they often involve other people. Or they involve a particular journey. I mean, if you look at any of them, they're related to the painting, yes, but they're also related to a larger sensibility. And each one of them, I think, speaks in some way to an issue. For example, Iris's Iris speaks, such a gorgeous piece, speaks to ageism and aging and that whole last great ism of the culture. And so each of them has something like that running behind it. I think if you study it, Linda would agree.
The things that you're saying remind me of, I believe that creative work is a life-affirming activity. And it also gives us a place to plug in so that when something happens, we often all feel a need to help out in some way. Some people are geared to be first responders. And then on the other end, there are people who are geared to look at it, interpret it through words or pictures. And all of it is very important in the end. And I thank you both so very much for your work and for your time today and your insights into the mystery of collaboration.
I hope it was something.
You are very welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
We'll have a limited edition of the On the Precipice installation in the Glen Arbor Arts Center lobby gallery. And it will also be viewable on the website, glenarborart.org. You can take your time and absorb things in the comfort of your home. And many thanks to all of you who watch these videos. Until next time, see ya.